ensures and validates that the educational experience, including classroom, lab, and clinical practice, have all taken place before you can sit for the certification exam. And so in the credentialing world, that's talked about a little bit like a gatekeeping process, but it's really just about protecting the patients and really protecting the profession, which is so, so important.
Clock in, scrub up, and join us behind the red line. You're listening to First Case, a perioperative podcast bringing you exciting interviews, engaging discussions, and innovative solutions that are changing the way patients receive surgical care. Each episode, we talk to frontline staff, perioperative leadership, and nursing entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the back table to the boardroom, from wheels in to wheels out, we tackle the real-life issues affecting the OR. Whether you're tuning in for surgical service education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. And now it's time to roll back and start the first case.
On this week's episode of First Case, we are speaking with Michelle Payne. She is the president of the National Board of Surgical Technology and Surgical Assisting. And today we are highlighting a certification exam that we have never talked about before, the CST exam. And I am excited to kind of sit back and listen today, Chris, as Michelle breaks down this exam. It's certainly not one I've ever taken, but I know you have. And so I'm excited to learn from Michelle today and hear more about this exam.
Yeah. Michelle is absolutely like the person that we need to talk to. This exam is something that I prepare my students for every single day. It's one that I actually took twice. So took it once when I was graduating from my program, went overseas and worked for 6 years. We didn't have it online then. I had to come back and retake it. So I have taken it, and then guess what? I have maintained my certification for, we're not going to date me today. So,
but you have maintained it because you are committed to lifelong learning.
Absolutely. And that of other people. So I'm excited for this episode. I'm excited for everybody else to learn about it because the CST credential is important. It's one I hold. It's one hundreds of my students hold, and I think other people should hold as well.
You're right. As many people who can be certified should be certified. And I'm excited to learn about that process today with her and what studying looks like. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back with Michelle Payne.
Hi, I'm Chris Blevins.
And I'm Melanie Perry.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to First Case.
Joining us now is Michelle Payne, president of the National Board of Surgical Technology and Surgical Assisting. And today we are answering that question, how do I, by looking at how do I study and prepare for the CST exam. And I know it can be daunting to think about a certification exam, and I've taken 2 of them myself. I know it's daunting and it can be overwhelming, and having somebody to point you in the right direction and get some tips, some feedback, and even just some pointers for best practices is key as you direct your study, because if you just try to drink from the fire hydrant, you're going to drown and you're not going to make any progress. So we are pleased to have Michelle joining us today to help us learn more about prepping for the CST exam. So Michelle, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It really is truly an honor to join you guys today.
Well, it is our pleasure to have you here because we've never discussed the CST exam before. We've tackled the CNOR exam a couple of times, and it is high time that we talk about CST exam as well because it's just as hard of a test and just as important for the certification for our surgical techs. But before we get into this topic, Michelle, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, sure. So again, my name's Michelle Payne. Right now, I am serving as the president of the board of directors for the National Board of Surgical Technology and Surgical Assisting. Throughout this podcast, instead of saying that big long name, we're just going to refer to that as NBSTSA. Everybody follows along. But my background does span over the course of the last 25 years in surgical technology. So a lot of hands-on clinical practice. But now I have transitioned that over into education. But again, my my primary focus has always been on patient care. And so I really do, and I'm humbled and thankful to be a part of an organization that focuses on the highest standards of care through competence. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, once again, it's a pleasure to have you. And I'm excited to actually sit back in this interview and just learn, because I've never seen the CST exam. I've never studied for it. I don't know a thing about it. But if it's anything like the CNOR or the CSSM, I know it's a hard test, and I know that it's overwhelming and causes a lot of anxiety for a lot of people. But as Chris is our podcast resident surgical tech expert, I'm going to pass the mic over to her. Chris, take it away with these questions and help everybody learn more about preparing for this test.
Man, Michelle, again, thanks for being on the podcast. Thank you for saying yes, because it's as an educator, fellow educator, the CST exam is a part of our everyday existence, right? Because it's in the back of our mind as we teach our students everything. Because at the end of their journey in our programs, we know that that's the goal, right? It's not just to sit for this exam, but to pass it, because it's so critical to their future success in our profession, you know. But for our listeners who maybe don't understand what in the world our alphabet soup is that we're talking about, you know, can you just tell them what is the NBSTSA CST exam, and also, you know, why is certification so important?
Yeah, that is actually a great question. So the Certified Surgical Technologist, which is what we refer to as the CST, so just kind of a clarification there. The Certified Surgical First Assistant, you'll also hear me talk a little bit about that. That will be the CSFA. So again, a little bit of the alphabet soup. But the NBSTSA is truly the gold standard for competence in our field. We have national certifications, and they are developed and administered and designed for people who are entering in the surgical technology field. And CSFAs are that exam is basically for experienced CSTs that are looking to expand their role in the operating room. So why is it important? I think I love that question even more. So certification is definitely more than a stamp or a piece of paper. This is truly your public assurance that has your safety and skill and your knowledge just brought all into that one certification. It tells employers, other licensing boards, and most importantly, the patient, that you have really met this national recognized benchmark. So currently we have about 86,000 certified professionals, and the NBSTSA is the largest, only nonprofit certification body that is dedicated solely to the surgical technology and surgical first assisting fields. We are accredited through the National Commission for Certifying Agencies. That is our accrediting body, and so you'll another little alphabet soup, NCCA.
Yeah. And all the letters today.
Yeah, all the letters today. But the really cool thing about our credential, too, is we're portable. And so that kind of means that we can move across state to state, or we can go from different healthcare systems if needed. And so that really does help with our credential.
Yeah. Melanie, you'll find that interesting because it's very different from registered nursing. So our CST certification is national. So, and even when I lived in Germany for 6 years and I worked overseas in our hospital systems there, like it was recognized. So when you're a CST, like that certification goes with you regardless of what state you're in. And in licensing for nurses, like you all tend to be regionally licensed, right?
Yeah. So your license is either by state, or you can have a compact license, which might be recognized in multiple states, but it's not necessarily recognized in every state. And so depending on what state you go to, depending on the state where you have your license, will determine whether or not you have to go back through licensure again, which is application and money, of course. It's not another test, but still you have to go back through the licensing process to be able to practice in that state. Our certifications, thankfully, travel with us no matter where we go. But for practice and for our licensing, no, it is very state specific, and it's a headache and a half. And I've lived in multiple states, and I have a license in multiple states now because of that. And it does get to be quite a headache. So it's cool that with that CST that you can just take it and move with it, and it's recognized. That is nice.
Yeah. So once you have it, like, it's key to keep it.
Yes.
That getting it is a chore, but it should be, because ultimately it's a recognition of the education that you've achieved and the knowledge that you have worked so hard to obtain, and so that leads me to my next question, Michelle, because, all of these questions, it's 150 questions, and there are 175 questions in this exam, but only 150 count. And I'll let you explain what those 25 are. But how in the world are those 150 even calculated, right? Because some people I've heard are students, and we tell them this 100 times, but, the students will be like, I don't know where that question came from, but you do. So start with that. So it's a 150 question exam, but, how in the world does the NB come up with these questions, and why are those particular questions so important as to gaining the knowledge and I guess getting a real feel for, what that knowledge level means as far as certification?
Yeah. So there are a huge amount of parameters, and a lot of those are defined by, again, we answer to an accreditation body as well. And so there is an entire test development process. Woo, and it is vigorous. So we do have 175 questions, and that is completed over 4 hours. Only 150 of those questions are scored for your pass or fail. The other 25 are new items. So we'll refer to questions as items too. So these are new items, and we're needing a psychometric evaluation on them before they can be real live scored questions. And so 25 of those could have really good feedback. They could have bad feedback. So a little bit about those. We have a content blueprint, and that comes to us from a job analysis survey, which is the first step. And so we developed that, and it's called the blueprint. And then the test development starts. So we have item writers, which we have a committee that are CSTs and CSFAs. And we have exam review, and we have item review. And so these are standing committees that the NBSTSA has. On these standing committees, there are practicing professionals, there are educators, and there are surgeons. And so they work under the oversight of the National Board of Surgical Technology, Surgical Assisting Board of Directors. And they really do develop, review, and validate the exam items. And so they're all people that live and breathe this surgical patient care. And I really like it because when you get into the psychometric evaluation of each of these items, it really is cool to see the data, because I'm a data girl. And so you can see the validity and the fairness come out as things are evaluated psychometrically. So we have 25 questions on a lot of these forms where we are trying to get that data to decide, is it a good question? So it does start with this survey, this job analysis survey, a content outline, and then it goes into excessive review. Crazy enough, one question could take 18 months to actually see on a scored examination.
Okay, so that is... Okay, well, I'm jumping ahead of myself because that's crazy. But it's actually really cool to me because the CNOR does the same thing. And so to know that this same kind of attention to detail, the same kind of testing out questions and seeing how, I hate to say how good they are because that's not really the right phrase to use, but see how well they do in testing and if this is going to be a really good question to really capture knowledge of the person taking the test. And I learned a lot from interviewing someone at CCI about the way the test is developed for the CNOR. So to hear that y'all do the same thing, it's like, this is really cool. I like that there's as much attention to detail for both tests, and there's a lot of test integrity when it comes to these certification exams. But back up to when you're talking about a job analysis survey, I know I said I wasn't going to talk very much, but I'm curious. So what exactly are we talking about in a job analysis survey?
So job analysis surveys can look different for different organizations, but for the surgical technologist and the surgical first assist, they go out to a sampling that's usually done through our psychometricians, but it goes out to a sampling of educators and practicing surgical technologists. It goes out to a sampling of very new surgical technologists or first assist and veteran surgical first assist. And so it has varying questions on it that talk about the practice of an entry-level surgical technologist. And then that survey results are gathered. And then a report is done based off that job analysis. And so after that report, that's when the content outline comes out. And I'll kind of give you one example. One of the previous years, over the course of the span of the last 12 years, and so on this most recent job analysis, it was shown that the surgical technologist isn't performing as much sterilization unless they work in a sterile processing unit. And so the question content went from 15 questions, if I'm not mistaken, down to 7 questions in that content relevant to what the surgical technologist does. And so all of that type of content comes out of that job analysis survey.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that outcome in the last one. So I have a question. In the job survey that goes out, is there a question that asks whether the people taking the survey are on the job trained, certified surgical technologists, graduates but not certified? Like, do you guys get that kind of data too as to who's filling out this information?
So not on the job analysis survey, and I don't think that question's asked. However, I can't be 100% sure because I can't remember the exact questions and they're not in front of me. But
I've seen that thing too. It's long, so no judgment here. It's a lot of questions. Yeah.
But we have sent out a survey recently that kind of looks at what that criteria and that data is.
Oh, I can't wait to see what that is, especially with like just the national, wave of where we are in our profession. So that'll be interesting to see. Now, okay. Once you realize that you're about to sit for this, hoo-ha of an exam, right? And that's very technical language, Melanie. I just want you to know. So
it's the most official out there, and I think it's perfect.
Yeah, so, absolutely. So how do you become eligible to sit for the CST exam?
So that's especially important right now while you talked about national wave. So there is a national wave. And so to be eligible for the CST or the CSFA exam, it starts with graduation from an accredited educational program. So let me say that real loudly. Graduation
from the people in the back. Hello.
Yeah, for all the people in the back. And so for surgical technology, that's KHEP or ABHES. For surgical first assistant, those are KHEP accredited. But what this does is it really ensures and validates that the educational experience, including classroom, lab, and clinical practice, have all taken place before you can sit for the certification exam. And so in the credentialing world, that's talked about a little bit like a gatekeeping process, but it's really just about protecting the patients and really protecting the profession, which is so, so important. We just don't want improperly trained people in the OR. I would not want someone that had not been vetted and went through the certification process to operate on me. So we just want somebody that has proven their qualifications and proven their educational background in order to sit for it. So, yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. No, it's okay. Melanie's heard my soapboxes.
She has lots of soapboxes, but yes, this is a big one. And I do have to agree, having experienced the difference in working with school trained versus some, not all, I don't want to offend anyone by any means, but some people who were more just on the job trained and very much tribal knowledge that is passed on when you're just trained on the job isn't always accurate. It's not always correct. And it can be detrimental. So I definitely can appreciate the attention to detail and the screening that comes into making sure that the people that we are turning out, that we are saying are certified, that have all of these things behind them, verifying, I guess, that they are qualified to be operating on anybody that comes in that operating room.
Yes. So very important. So very important.
So you have all of this knowledge about the exam, about the things that are on it and how the questions are there. And, I'm an educator. You're an educator. People have heard my mouth on this podcast a lot. So I would love for somebody to hear, what are your tips and tricks for studying for this mammoth of an exam?
Oh, so studying for the exam. So when you're preparing, again, I'm going to say, please make sure that you're starting with the right foundation, graduating from an accredited program. So as you're doing that, I always say develop a study plan. Develop it and follow it and don't deviate from it and make it a priority. So I really try to tell people 6 to 8 weeks before the exam, really set aside a large amount of time to prepare, whether that's through the NBSTSA approved study resources, or even if it's taking practice tests, because I think it's really important that you understand how to test in a timed environment so that you simulate that and you really build up that endurance and that confidence. But I always tell people, don't do this alone. Get a study group. It's always a lot easier, I think, to retain information if you're able to talk about it and you're talking about the rationale as to why something's right or why something's wrong. It just really kind of reinforces a lot of that content. So I tell people, take 5 to 10 hours a week, especially 6 to 8 weeks before the exam, and review all the content based off that content outline, just to make sure you're really confident in that.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I think those test-taking strategies are the same thing you guys used, Melanie, for all of your certifications, right? It's not knowing. It's like, how do you take a test?
How do you take a test? How do you prepare? And cramming the night before and pulling an all-nighter is not the answer. So, and one piece of advice that I was given before the CNOR by the person actually we're interviewing about the CNOR later this season, Wendy Sander. But what she said was, when you decide you're going to take this certification exam, go ahead and schedule it. Get it scheduled so that you have a deadline that is looming up on you that you can look forward to because it's scheduled. And so now I know what to work with. And she says, schedule it like 3 months out or whatever. So you have time, you can do your study outline, you can plan, and you know it's coming. It's not just this nebulous idea that at some point I'll take it, but I'm committed. I've got my date scheduled and now I have my window of study, and it pushes you along to keep studying rather than, just kind of not really committing to anything. But that all-nighter is not going to work. So have your study plan, have your time, a little bit each day. And then as it builds, obviously you spend more time. But yeah, same advice. I think all of us have been given that advice when it comes to these big exams.
Well, it's such a different pathway because those of us who are educators, our students that are going to be graduates, there's a pathway that we can utilize that we schedule the exam for them, at the end of their right towards their graduation. So we already have a plan because that's what we do. We're educators, right? So we have a study plan for them. We know exactly how they're going to do this, and we get them ready because it's a part of our outcomes that we're responsible for as an accredited program. So we are preparing them the entire way. But someone who is self-motivated, who maybe is in a state that doesn't require certification, unfortunately, and that's another episode. But when they decide that, by God, I am going to do the right thing, I'm going to become certified, and I'm going to take this test and prove that I know and that I'm worthy, right? That is a totally different hill to climb, right? Because you're out of the, I think, the regular studying habit that a student who's full-time is. And that's daunting to be able to get back into that habit. And also we've seen clinical practice and book work can be very different, unfortunately. So it's very, I think, intimidating, this exam on its own, whether you're a student or practicing surgical technologist in the operating room. Yeah. So I am curious, as somebody from the NB, you guys get a lot of emails and questions and those things. What are some of the common mistakes or misconceptions or preconceived notions that you guys get when it comes to the CST exam that you'd like to take this platform and kind of nip in the bud, if you will.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you.
So did you see her eyes light up? I know this is a verbal podcast, but
Yeah, she's got a list.
I know. I love the fact that I was able to give you this moment because I know that you guys have gotten them. And so I'm super excited to give you the mic at this moment, Michelle. Yeah.
I'll tell you, this most common mistake right now and everything that we hear, especially on social media platforms and different things like that, is there are all of these fly-by-night online programs that are making these quick promises of you're going to graduate with this certificate, you're going to be able to sit for certification, you're going to go get, all of this employment opportunity. And we get all of these emails and calls wanting to know why they can't sit for certification. Well, it's because you're ineligible.
Because you haven't been trained, child. Hello.
Yes. And so they really do feel like they haven't vetted that they were getting into a 2-year accredited school and that the program was reputable. And so it really does leave them ineligible to test. And they have spent thousands of dollars, unfortunately, into an online program without clinical placement and different things along that line that just leads them to nothing, fortunately.
It's so
and so
sad.
We see that almost all the time as one of the big mistakes that people are just oversight, not educated about. And I just can't stress that enough, how important that detail is to get into the profession and to establish baseline competence and patient safety, which is the most important thing that we should focus on. So
I'm so glad you said that. So there are different ways to test for the exam. There are some places that you can test at your school using a live proctor. There are some where you have to go to a PSI location. That's who is actually, running the NBSTSA exam. And that can be really, scary. I think regardless, whether it's the CST exam, whether it's your CNOR, any of those, you're an educator, what do you tell your students to get rid of that test day anxiety, set your mind right? I want another educator to be able to say, hey, this is what you can do to get in the zone, so to speak.
Yes, I love that. Get in the zone. Isn't that perfect? Yeah. So, there are, I think, several things that you can do to prep. I think the most important thing, though, is the prep itself. Like establishing the confidence in the material so that when you go in, you're not second guessing yourself or nervous, like just the repetition and really prepping for it. Again, like you said, Melanie, it's not a cram the night before type of exam. And so I think that produces a lot of anxiety of the unknown for those that maybe aren't truly prepared. But I also tell my students the night before, gosh knows it, make sure that you sleep, make sure that you hydrate, make sure that you eat breakfast. Don't stay up all night doing this last minute cramming because at that point, I don't think it's going to help. And I also kind of talk to them a little bit about mindfulness. If you get into a situation and you're reading a question and you're unsure, go past it and get to a question that you are sure about and just kind of keep going through the questions to make yourself even feel that much more confident. And breathing, just take deep breaths, settle your mind, keep your mind right, because you are ready for this. You are trained for this. You have completed the requirements. And so just really trying to uplift them from that standpoint. But I have to say, I have went as far as to meeting them at the door with a therapy dog. So
I would love a therapy dog. You can meet me at my door with a therapy dog. I would be very happy.
I should bring my doodle.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
As you're entering the facility, just get a good puppy dog kiss and go take your exam.
I love that. I always tell them, respect your raisin, right? Like, it's so Southern, but like, you were raised right. Like, you were told the right things to do. If you did your part, right, you know what to do. so like breathe. Yeah. How many times have we said breathe in this conversation?
Just breathe. I know.
Oh, so good. Yeah. So as always, Michelle, like the time flies when we're having fun. And Melanie and I try to stay off the naughty list, but we're super unsuccessful. So
yeah, our interviews run longer than they're supposed to, but they're good.
Yeah, but so it's okay. They're fun. Yeah. So, at the end of the day, like certification matters. And it's a huge exam. It brings a lot of pressure, but it's worth it, right? So what do you have to say for those who maybe students that it's right around the corner, or those who've been practicing, but they're thinking about getting certified? Why is it worth it? Final thoughts are on you, Michelle.
Okay. So first, as we're finishing up here, I do truly want to say thank you to all the certified surgical technologists and certified surgical first assistants that are out there. The work is so truly essential, and the educators that help provide the education for that, you are just truly valued. And so I say thank you on behalf of the NBSTSA. It's so nice just to support an organization that is truly built upon patient safety and really establishing that gold standard competence. And so I do want to add, as final thoughts, that once you actually take the exam, it doesn't stop there. Certification is truly just the beginning of a beautiful professional journey. And so both CSTs and CSFAs are required to complete continuing education to stay certified. And I feel like it is really important to stress that, just because you've worked so hard to have that competence and that certification, and you don't want to let that lapse. You want to continue to show that validation towards patient safety. So CSTs have to get 30 credits every 2 years. 4 of those have to be live. CSFAs need 38 continuing education every 2 years, and 8 of those have to be live. So I do want to just recognize that and just show that we are committed to lifelong learning. And I really feel that it's important to help our certificates understand their value. I think that's very, very important. And to watch them grow and to encourage leadership within their career, and to just help promote the surgical technologist and the certified surgical first assistant. Very passionate about that. And so I love the value that's placed around the work that these individuals do. So anybody that doesn't want to sit for certification or put forth that effort, I tell you, find the value and find the motivation and find just the will to really study and put in the work for that, because it is going to be worth it in the end.
Absolutely. And Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time today to help us see the value and the benefit of this test, and also get some kind of insider tips on just how to best be prepared. So thank you again for joining us.
Yes, thank you. It was great to be able to just shine a very small light on the surgical technology and surgical first assisting profession. So thank you.
That was Michelle Payne, president of the National Board of Surgical Technology and Surgical Assisting, or to get the acronym correct, and it really is a mouthful, NBSTSA.
You did it.
I did, because I had to read while I was looking at it so I could say it correctly.
Reading is one of the qualifications for sitting for the CST
If you can
exam.
read, you've met one qualification. But Michelle had so much to teach us today. And honestly, some of the stuff that we've even learned in school when it comes to test taking, dealing with test taking anxiety, but thinking about it in terms of the CST exam, because these certification exams are no joke, and they obviously carry a lot of weight, a lot of professional weight, a lot of personal, I don't want to fail and screw up, all of these things. And they say so much about us when we accomplish that goal and we've passed this test, and we can say that we're certified no matter what certification we hold, right? And so all the questions that come up, how do I study for this test? How do I pass it? And I think Michelle did a good job of breaking down some of that and kind of letting us see that it's a test for sure. We got to be ready, but there are ways to tackle that test. Right, Chris?
Yeah, and Michelle is such a resource. I've known Michelle for years, and she is very passionate about certification, and we all are. But, once the goal is that certification is a measurement of your knowledge and skill set at that point in time. But the reason why it matters is because it shows your dedication to continuing to keep that standard. So what she mentioned about continuing education credits, it's not just hitting a number so you don't have to take this exam again. It's just continually, showing people that you are committed to having the most updated knowledge on your profession all the time. So whether you're a nurse, whether you're a surgical technologist, medicine is constantly changing. So you want to know everything that you can about the best techniques. What's the most safe for your patient? What is asepsis? Like all of those things that we've constantly berated on our audience, for season after season. But that's it. It's like, it's being the best you can be for your profession, for your patient, and for your team members all the time, and be a forever learner.
Yeah, you're right. And I think we've said that every episode so far this season, but don't be resistant to knowledge. Yeah. Be open to change, to new things, to new ideas, to incorporating those in your practice. Be a lifelong learner. And one of the ways that you demonstrate that is through your certification and maintaining that and the continuing education that goes with it. So that is going to do it for today. That is all the time that we have. So on behalf of Chris, myself, and our whole team, thanks for listening to this week's episode of First Case.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of First Case. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to First Case on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for First Case in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@firstcasemedia.com. We look forward to hearing from you.